My interest in dreams begins mostly or is prioritized mostly by the 8 hours of sleep. If we think of this in terms of a lifetime of a third of one's life being in sleep, then the quality of sleep and with it the potential of dreams is, at least in the abstract, a really important thing to me. I say in abstract because while I've read lucid dreaming books and think everyone should check that out, while I've read books about dreaming, while I've made affirmations before going to bed, such as saying 3 times, "Tonight I will have a healing dream. Tonight I will have a healing dream. Tonight I will have a healing dream." The affirmation is terrific, and I may well be having healing dreams, but my recall is relatively low. And I don't recall having a lucid dream, although, if I can say it this way, I recall recalling that I had a lucid dream or some level of lucidity. The best that I can do is to play with sleep a little bit in terms of changing time zones. There's a phenomena with jet lag. If you fly to Asia, for example, from the United States, or much more significantly when you fly back, where there is it feels like there's a thickness in the air, a thickness between living and thought. It's kind of like consciousness travels through a little bit of a tunnel. Now, playing with that, waking and napping over several days whenever I want. What I will say is that there is an in-between consciousness place that I haven't heard talked about in dream books. But it is a place in which I have done some of my best meditation. And so the way that I would frame it is that there's a vast continuum of different ways to chop up time, of different ways of looking at dreams. Everything that I've read suggests that consciousness transcends many of the limits of the conscious mind. We all know about the vertical aspect of time, and that seems like one of the most important opportunities of dreams, because if you think of time as a space-time equation, then if you travel linearly between 1 second and the next second, linearly, you've got what? In this hand, if we imagine a very big clock, let's say it's a 4-inch distance for the second hand to travel per second. But if you travel vertically within the same time continuum, if you think of a CD player reading one image and then the next image, but that there's a whole other set of film that's vertical, or if you imagine a DVD player in which you've got the laser is going in a spiral pattern, but then you interject a vertical DVD in between 2 of the frames, and you can watch an entire million frames on a high definition DVD in between, going from one frame to the other. In this sense, time stops being linear. And what that means is that one's consciousness can speed up to a point to notice the details, or can zoom in to a point in altered states of consciousness. And this is in dreams, in psychedelic experience, in lucid dreams, and at times in meditation. It's also true in thinking. You may be sitting and eating, and while you're eating, you traveled to India. Then you had a conversation with an imaginary person there. Then that prompted you to think of Morocco, and then you spent some time there playing out probabilities, and then you noticed the pickle in the sandwich, and then you went back to Japan and had a conversation there. And in this 15-minute, eating, you've traveled all over the world, had multiple conversations, and you've not just had multiple conversations, you've had multiple variations of the conversation, because you've had several probable conversations. You began talking, and then you said, no, I don't like that. I don't like the way they look at me. In your imagination, so back up, have another version of the conversation, and say, okay, I like that one better, but is there a better one? And no, what I should have said is this. So you have probable conversations. And all of that is happening at hyperspeed. You couldn't even get off and wipe your face to pay your restaurant bill in that time, let alone, travel all the way to India and stuff. And so dreams are among the altered states of consciousness that have vertical time possibilities, vertical time probabilities. And depending on, I think, in part, the desire. For example, if the conscious mind is afraid of the unknown, it may block a lot of dream activity because the conscious mind doesn't have control. If you drift into a past lifetime, if you go into a probable life, if you face one of your fears that you're committed to not facing as a conscious reality, then that may throw you off center. And so one way is to, of course, just block it out. My abstract belief is that dreams are incredibly powerful tools, and that we are underserved as a cult by learning nothing about their potential and reality in waking state. And this is odd when you consider a couple of, for example, I'm born in the United States. If you think of the fact that Thomas Edison, one of the greatest inventors of all time, had a soundproof room constructed in his factory. Now, the creation of a soundproof room takes a lot of effort, particularly in the middle of a factory. And so an intelligent person, particularly an industrialist, a materialist in many ways, is not going to do that unless they value it highly. So why did Edison create his soundproof room? He did it so that he could take naps and reflect on the problems in his inventing and engineering before starting his nap. And he would have a pen and paper beside him so that as soon as the nap ended, that if there was any flash of insight around his inventions and engineering, he would write it down. And the reason it was worth the enormous effort of making a soundproof room and taking a nap in the middle of the day religiously and writing it down is because Edison experienced a reality in which he had many solutions to some of his most difficult engineering problems derived from insights in the dream state that he would try to bring back. In many paradigms of metaphysics and philosophy, the conscious mind is viewed as a zoomed-in telescopic lens, where you can just, you just see a little bit of detail, but you see it very clearly. And that the subconscious mind is everything that you can possibly remember. Even the stuff that you don't remember remembering is kind of captured in the sensory, physiological memories of the subconscious mind. And that the unconscious mind spans time between lifetimes and probable realities, and that the higher conscious mind includes such geography of the psyche as those parts of us that are not physical, that are just way outside the set that we're working in as conscious individuals. And so dreams are doorways into that domain. Now, one of the interesting, I went through a period of religiously writing down my dreams, what they might mean, and taking action. I think one of the biggest reasons I may not remember more of my dreams is that there is a certain emotional age in me that is terrified of making mistakes. And I think it comes from, childhood traumatization in terms of when you make a mistake and suddenly a parent hits you and they're a giant and you're an infant. It's terrifying to get it wrong. But in a culture like ours, the hitting comes first, the explanation comes later. We do a terrible job as grown-ups in our culture, I hesitate to say adults, instilling the knowledge that we have to offer as a culture as grown-ups to children. And they have a much more intuitive and different way of working with things. And so there's all kinds of things that a child doesn't understand or doesn't know and is hit or traumatized for getting wrong. And then there's a lot of message, wake up, stop dreaming, this is the real world, and all of this that makes it very clear that this culture does not value or take an interest in daydreaming states. Now, there are very noteworthy exceptions, Edison being one, Einstein getting the theory of relativity in the dreams, Francis Crick learning about the double helix pattern of DNA on LSD. And then there's I remember reading in one of the in one of the tech companies' kind of biographies. I think it was in the book In Search of Excellence by Tom Peters, that in one of the tours of the factories, they came through. And I think it was the Lockheed Martin Skunk Works, may have been the company. But at any rate, they were taking a tour of the factory and they saw an employee who was just daydreaming and gazing out the window. And someone on the tour asked, why isn't that employee doing anything? Everyone else is. And the owner of the company said, that man was gazing out the window when he came up with an idea that made me $1 million. And from that time forward, he can gaze out the window as long as he wants. If that's the way to get $1 million ideas, let's have more daydreaming and gazing out the window. But it does take, either eccentricity or a noticeable breach with our culture's etiquette of get things done and be productive and all that, in order for us to honor in any way the infinite possibility of perception and conception that is possible in the dream world. Now, I keep a notepad by my bed, and often when I'm waking up in the morning, if I linger and drift in and out of sleep, I will get ideas and I'll write them down. Often at night, if I can't sleep, I'll get ideas and write them down. I don't remember that many dreams. Now, one of the things that you can do if you don't remember dreams, but someone in your family does, is to be aware of the interconnected matrix of consciousness. Meaning, if someone is a family member or a lover or a close friend, it is very probable that their dreams not only concern themselves, but concern the ecology of which they are a part. In part because there's no distinction. How a person is feeling has a lot more to do with how the 5 people around them are feeling than it does with their innate beingness. when you have a majority environment that is dominating and influencing space and time and attitude and energy level, etc., it's far more common for an individual to shift in some way that has to do not so much with their innate being, but with the environmental influences around them. And so when my wife, who has a more lucid connection with dreams than I do, told me about her dreams, I always listened. And I say listen because her dreaming has gone down more of late. But in the time where we were getting to know each other, she talked a lot about her dreams. And what I learned was that I would show up in the dreams. And so my protocol was to, one, invite her to share the dream. Two, I didn't look very good in the dreams a lot of the time. Sometimes I was the bully. Sometimes I was, not being sensitive enough to something. And so if I heard that in the dream, the way I chose to take it was that that if I could shift in daily life in a way that would shift the dream narrative. In other words, if I assumed that at some level, some aspect of that dream was speaking about some aspect of me, and that some aspect of the dream was speaking about some aspect of my wife, then I would consciously try and learn from that message and would very actively make a shift. Now, the reason to value dreams, in part, from a rational perspective, is that they improve your life. Now, my experience was that when I made a shift in response to the messages coming through my wife's dreams, that our relationship improved. And that's that's an intelligent result. Your primary relationship will affect you more than almost anything else. And so if a dream, either in you or in a partner, can lead to a dramatic improvement of the relationship, that is a fabulous outcome. And so the way I took it was, I'm blocking dreams for whatever reason. My wife's getting dreams for both of us. And so I often took them more seriously than she did, would do my best to understand the message, change, and saw a marked benefit. So that's been my evolution and growth around dreams.